welcome back to another EDH Deck Tech. My name is Scott, and I've got an interesting one for you today. So I had bought the Necron Dynasties PRECON. Super fun deck, out of the box, great, love it. Have been having a blast with it. But I did want to do my attempt at an upgrade. You know, there's a lot of cards that are just kind of like, you know, that kind of pre-con level, not really adding anything much to the deck. So I thought, okay, well, I'll try my hand at doing an upgrade. I've never really done an upgrade. This is the second pre-con that I've bought, but the first one I just pulled for singles. So I never actually played it out of the box. So this one was a lot of fun to play out of the box and then, you know, give my go at doing an upgrade. So it is Szarekh the Silent King. Now, I had identified very early on that I wasn't really interested in playing this commander. I find it a pretty average card, to be honest. It often whiffed. So I did replace it with Imotekh the Stormlord. Now, this card is much more fun. It's asking a lot more of the deck. It's allowing you to add more synergies. You know, Szarekh doesn't really add any real synergies. It's just like, you know, hey, you just get a creature back from the graveyard. Cool. But Imotekh's asking you to jump through some hoops and then rewarding you really well with that. So I did replace it as my commander of this deck. You'll notice this is still in the black sleeves and I have clear sleeves for my commander. So Szarekh out, it remains the 99 because essentially my goal of this deck was to keep anything that really facilitated the unearthing, the raise dead, the resurrection, removing things from the graveyard. If it really did that, it was kept in. I kept myself to 20 cards at $100 budget, right? So there's lots of cards. I mean, there's still some bad cards in there, you know, unearths that cost 8. You know, so those cards could probably go for something else. But I did keep it for 20 cards. So, you know, have that bit of restriction, have that bit of fun with deck building. So Imotekh the Stormlord is my commander. So with that in mind, we'll go through the first half of my changes. So these are the things that I added in. Obviously, you know, if you're familiar with the deck, these do not come in it. So these are what I've added in. So we'll go through each. So Tortured Existence. Actually, Tortured Existence is probably the best card in the deck. So 1 black mana enchantment, pay 1. You choose and discard a creature from your hand. And then you return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, right? So you're essentially swapping creatures. So for 1 mana, you are triggering Imotekh. Each one will be a new trigger, so you're getting 2 Necrons. It can be done at instant speed. It's super cheap. The only thing you need is a creature in your hand and a creature in your graveyard, and you can just keep swapping those same ones, right? So when I had this, essentially, I was just doing that. I was just creating lots of tokens because all I did was spend my mana doing that. So probably the best card in the deck. And then Scrappy Scrounger, very similar. So it is an artifact creature, so you can give it its menace trigger and its buff. But it will essentially, you know, exile a creature. So you pay to exile a creature card from your graveyard. Trigger. Then it returns to the battlefield, another trigger, right? So for this, as long as you are exiling a creature from your graveyard, so that is definitely a cost, you know, that is not free. And I mean that in both the game mechanics sense and also in the fact that we have a limited amount of creatures. We want to keep those creatures because we want to raise those creatures from the dead. So having this, there is a cost, but you know, getting 4 2/2 tokens at instant speed has been really, really nice. So that's another great card. Essentially, these 4 here are very similar. So Mere Retriever, this one's 2 mana. This one's the cheapest. The others are all 3. When it dies, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So important, this one's artifact cards. So not just your artifact creatures, but artifact lands. Now, I haven't really touched the lands too much in this deck, but if I had more budget, I would definitely put some artifact lands in there. But there is Vault of Whispers that comes with the precon, so it can get that, for instance, right? Now, that will trigger Imotekh. The good thing is that things like Junk Diver, same thing, artifact card. Now, if you have one in your graveyard and one on the battlefield, you can sacrifice the one on the battlefield, get the one from the graveyard, and then rinse and repeat, right? So you're just constantly getting it back into your hand. Same with Workshop Assistant. When it dies, return another artifact card. Same thing. Now, Scrap Trawler is a little bit different. So when it or another artifact goes to the graveyard from the battlefield, return it to your hand, that target artifact card with lesser cost, right? So this one's 3, so it's great with Mirror Retriever because it is 2, but it is lesser mana cost. So keep that in mind of the sacrifice thing. But we will be using this to really start pumping out those tokens, right? So in addition to that, I've got these sacrifice outlets. There is another one that comes in the deck, if I remember correctly. So Altar of Dementia. I've tried to go for ones that, you know, don't really have a cost to it. So sacrifice creature, we mill equal to the sacrifice creature's power. This is great because it facilitates, you know, putting stuff into our graveyard for us to, you know, scrap crawler out, things like that. You know, and our torches exist, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's facilitating that. Grinding Station, another one, but this one is a tap. We don't really have a lot of like any untap effects, so this is really a one-off, but it does come whenever artifact comes into play, you may untap, right? So you're just naturally facilitating that. There's so many artifacts in this deck that you're just naturally doing this, so it's going to untap itself, but essentially sacrifice, and we're going to mill some cards, right? So it's going to fill that graveyard. And then Altar of Ashnod's Altar and Kraken's Eye works very similar. So the Ashnod's Altar is sacrifice creature. The Kraken Eye works to sacrifice an artifact. This one's 3 mana, this one's 4 mana, but they both give us 2 mana in our mana pool. Now that is very important. So as you'll see with some of our win conditions, we are playing Nim's Death Mantle, and I'll go through how that works later. But essentially, these will support our win cons. The great thing is that we can have both, and normally you have just like Ashnod's Altar as your win con, but here we have Kraken Ironworks and Ashnod's Altar, so we have that double up effect, which is great because essentially our Necron tokens are both artifacts and creatures, right? So it's going to work both ways, but really great for ramp as well. So that's the first 10. Okay, our next 10 are really going to be supporting pieces to those first 10. So Perpetual Timepiece and Mesmeric Orb serve very similar effects where they are essentially there to help mill our graveyard. So this one, it's going to put 2 cards in our graveyard. It's nice for 2 mana. You can also pay 2 and exile it. And you're going to return a number of target cards from your graveyard to your library, which will also trigger Imotekh, right? So it itself will trigger as well as facilitate putting things into our graveyard, which is what we want. Mesmeric Orb, super cheap one. And now this does affect everyone, but we don't really care about other people's graveyards, but you know, people might. Essentially, it is you're going to mill a card for each permanent you have tapped. So, you know, we want to be spending all of our mana. So all of our lands will be tapped, our creatures will be tapped, we'll be swinging for attacks, things like that, right? So you're going to get quite a few cards milling, which is great. Next to ramp, so Solemn Simulacrum, it's an artifact creature, so it kind of facilitates the theme of the deck. And sorry about the glare. So great for ramp, bit of card draw, sacrifice, things like that. And then Milliken, it mills a card. It's an artifact creature as well, so it facilitates both those effects where we want artifact creatures, just a simple mill. Malachite Rebirth, just as a protection spell, it is a land on the other side, so really, really fantastic. Now, there are 37 lands in the deck already. I have removed some. Essentially, I've replaced the Swamp for a Malachite Rebirth, and I've also got Hagra Mauling as well. I don't need those additional lands. I'll just put these MDFCs in there as well. But it serves as protection just in case they want to get Imotekh. Plus, it also triggers Imotekh as well, in that the creature will die and then will just come back. So it will go from the graveyard and then trigger as it comes back to the battlefield. And then Hagra Mauling as well. Bad removal, but it's a land on the other side, and sometimes you might use that removal. In addition to the removal, I thought the removal was a bit lacking, at least in the target removal. So I did put in Noxious Gearhulk, Artifact Creature, so facilitating that theme again as well. A little bit of life gain, so that's okay. And then Meteor Golem. Now I originally had Feed the Swarm in this slot, but I did go again Meteor Golem just because A, it's an artifact, we can bring it up, so bring it back, so we may not necessarily have to pay the 7. We can bring it back from the graveyard, but it's going to destroy those kind of rest in peace effects, things like that. So I went with that over, say, Feed the Swarm, but you could put something like that in this slot. And then the win conditions. So I'll go through Marionette Master first. So with this one, whenever artifacts I control go to the graveyard, so that's why I've got like a heavy sacrifice theme, is really to facilitate this. It's going to fabricate, you really put the counters on it, so that it's going to be hitting people for 4. Now I like Marionette Master because I think it can whack a punch by itself. Like I don't necessarily have to be looping through with Nim's Death Mantle, so this is just decent by itself. But you could play like Disciple of the Vault here, which is much cheaper in this kind of slot, to add another Blood Artist effect, or you could even play Blood Artist or Silverpaw Cutthroat. You know, any one of those kind of effects would also facilitate this. I did like Marionette Master because I think it also whacks a punch, even though I'm not looping. It still presents enough of a threat. And then Nim Death Mantle. So this combo is well known. Essentially, you can use Ashnod's Altar and Krark's Clan Ironworks to sacrifice the 2 Necron tokens that are created, to then pay the 4 to have the creature that died return. So you sacrifice a creature, in response sacrifice the 2 Necrons that you have. It's going to bring that creature back. You're going to create 2 Necrons, and so forth, right? So with Marionette Master, with the other, I forget the name, the Blood Artist effect already in the deck, you can use those as your win conditions. So keep that important. So those are the additions, the whole 20 additions. Okay, so the removals, really I did focus down on what doesn't come back from the graveyard. If it doesn't like itself come back from the graveyard, or facilitate that either through draw or removal or things like that. So I really focused on those. So like I said, 2 swamps, I sort them out for MDFCs, just much more utility. Darkness, I love darkness. Don't get me wrong, I love darkness. But I found that I had a lot of tokens for blockers, so people weren't really attacking me. So this whole fog thing wasn't really necessary. I found that I had a lot of creatures to block, and I was okay for them to die. So darkness I kind of took out. Cranial Plating, I wasn't that much of an attacking deck. It was kind of nice to have something that would facilitate like a nice threat. But yeah, I wasn't really attacking that much, especially when I went down the sacrifice route. And then this Imotekh Wraith. So it's one of the new ones. Essentially, it's a burning heart, but worse? Question mark. So, you know, it can't block, and then you can sacrifice it by paying the 3 when you do damage to get the swamps. Basically, it was just a lot of hoops really to go through. I felt like the ramp was sufficient. So, yeah. Night Scythe, it's just a vehicle that creates a token, not really adding really anything. This Szarekh Immortal, Flash, it just came and was just, you know, it's just a big creature. Not really something we want to do. Sculpting Steel is a good card. It can copy artifact creatures, which is really nice. But sometimes, like, I don't know, it just was a bit win-more-y. I often didn't need another copy of one of the artifacts that I had. So yeah, it just felt a bit awkward sometimes. And I'd hold it, I'm like, okay, is this the thing that I want to copy? You know, I have a lot of like mid-range creatures and nothing like, maybe if I had like a Wormcoil engine or something like that, maybe I might want it back. But yeah, Unstable Obelisk, like I said, I felt the ramp was mostly sufficient, so I took a few out. You know, I had the Solemn Simulacrum and the Millikin in this one, 3 mana rock, and for 7 mana, you know, I can destroy target movement. Not really interested. Necron Overlord. This one was just it's a bit expensive to tap. You know, yes, I have a few untapped artifacts, but like it ended up being, you know, it's just a few damage here and there. It wasn't really amounting to a lot. So that's the first lot of removals. Okay, so the second lot of removals really kind of focused down on what was big and expensive and I just didn't need. You know, the CMC, the average CMC was just really, really high. So I've taken a lot of the big stuff out that wasn't really doing much. So Plasmancer, this just got a swamp. It wasn't, you know, 4 mana, just a 3/3 flying just to get a swamp. Wasn't really much. The Imotekh Destroyer, when an artifact comes in, you get first strike, and it has death touch. It's kind of like a nice attacker, but like I said, I wasn't really attacking too much. I was kind of going more for that sacrifice theme, so this kind of went. Get a Lotus. I felt like the ramp was, you know, quite sufficient, so I took this one. You know, it's a big mana rock. This one could definitely stay in. It's not necessarily a bad card, just, you know, a bit expensive. Triarch Stalker. Like I said, not really, you know, it wasn't facilitating our graveyard theme. It's cool that it gives menace and gives other people menace to attack somebody else. It's a cool card, but yeah, it wasn't really, you know, working with my strategy. And then Case, another good card, but ultimately it's an expensive ramp. Imotekh was 4 mana, so this just came down really late, and I didn't really care that my Necron tokens were now 3/3s. So yeah. The War in Heaven, ultimately I felt that this one was just too expensive. 6 mana was really slow. You know, you're not going to get your thing to 8 mana. This one does help with the graveyard, but yeah, it was just an expensive effect for this. Trazyn the Infinite, really, really good card. Great commander in its own right. I think, you know, it's in here and it can work with the Precon, where you got like Gilded Lotus and things like that, where you can just tap it for mana, but then I've got a 6 mana rock. I'm not really interested in it. So this one, yeah, it's for its own deck. Necro Monolith, just really expensive vehicle, just didn't do much. It would whiff, so, you know, whatever, I'm just swinging out with 7/7. The last cut and the hardest cut, I really love this card. There are so many of these 7 mana big beaters that does something on attack trigger that I just love. The Brass Dragon from the Commander Legends. The Commander Legends, I think. You know, those kind of effects where it's just like, these are just big fun creatures, and this card rocks. This card's really cool, but it's just so expensive, which, you know, just makes it a bad card. If you could reanimate it, you know, turn 1 Entomb, turn 2 animate dead, have a blast, have lived the dream. That would be so cool, but outside of that, not really much going on. And Shard the Nightbringer, this one's definitely bad. You know, you cast it, people are going to lose life. It's 8 mana. So really I focus on this, you know, getting rid of those big expensive spells. Yeah, so that's my upgrade. 20 cards in, 20 cards out, $100 budget. Imotekh, much better, or much interesting, or more interesting, sorry, commander than Szarekh. Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. I'm going to continue playing it. I definitely would do some honorable mentions when it comes to things like the lands, you know, adding Treasure Vault or Inventor's Fair and stuff like that, you know, those kind of artifact lands. I've got like a configuration in my Fane the Broker and also my Braids deck. I did pull apart my Braids deck to start building this. So yeah, so they had a lot of artifact lands, so I'd kind of utilize that same template when it came to the lands. Other than that, yeah, I think maybe a few more cards could be tweaked, but there's a lot of fun cards in this deck, and I've been having a blast. Yeah, so thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy.